Hello everyone. Today we are going to do lecture 15, which is a continuation of the chapter involving the Keynesian theory. So last class we looked at we tried to understand what the Keynesian model talked about, and we also looked how this model worked. Basically, whenever there is a recession in the economy, the government will inject or the government will intervene into the market and they will increase their expenditure, which in turn will increase consumption and investment, and then the aggregate demand will go up, taking the economy out of the recession. Now, based on that, we also saw last class that when government increases expenditure in the economy, then the aggregate demand or the GDP or the total output increases by a greater extent. So there is a magnified effect, and we saw that it's called the multiplier effect. So basically, let's say if government increases expenditure by 2%, then most likely the aggregate demand or the overall output in the economy went up by 3% or 4%. So there is a magnified effect. What you are putting in and what's coming out is more than what you're putting in. Okay, but there is also another side to this discussion or to this topic. So, and that is described by the balanced budget multiplier. Okay, but let me first tell you, when government is increasing spending into the economy, or when government is increasing the expenditure into the economy, how are they financing this money? Where are they getting this money from? So the government can get this money from two sources. They can either borrow the money from the banks, or they can increase the taxes on people or businesses on people, the taxes on business. So similarly, when there is an increase on taxes in the economy, there is a multiplied impact on the output, but in a negative manner. So what it means is when the tax rate goes up, let's say by 2%, then output will probably go down by 3%. So, on the one side, we have when government increases expenditure, your output will go up at a greater extent. On the other hand, we have in order to finance that government expenditure or government spending, we need to increase taxes, and when you increase taxes, it has a magnified impact on your output, and your output goes down by a greater percentage. And then the difference between the increase in output because of government expenditure and the decrease in output because of the taxes, the difference between these two is given by the balanced budget multiplier and is known as the net impact on the output. So again, to summarize, during times of recession, let's say the government increases expenditure and this causes the output to go up by a greater percentage. But at the same time, in order to increase the government expenditure, in order to finance that, they have to increase taxes. When they are increasing taxes, there is a negative impact on the economy, which causes the output to go down by a greater percentage than the increase in tax. And then we finally, at the end, we compare the two output, the positive and the negative, and find out what is the net impact on the economy in terms of the output. And this is known as the balanced budget multiplier. So in your slide, if you say the balanced budget multiplier basically quantifies the magnification that comes from the government income or government spending increase and the increase in taxes at the same time. So we do a net and find out how much by how much the output actually went up, because of government spending the output went up, but because of taxes output went down. So what is the net increase or decrease in output in the economy? So again, if the government wants to increase spending, it can finance that increased expenditure either through increased taxes or through borrowing money from the bank or other governments. Usually it is a combination of the two. They sometimes they will increase taxes by certain percentage and then borrow the money from the rest from the from another country or from the bank or from the state governments. This is different, depends on the circumstances. So one thing to remember is when the government is increasing the spending, the impact, the magnified impact will be greater than the impact of taxes. This is because the government spending increase is directly applied to the economy as an injection. So when the government is injecting money or when the government is increasing its expenditure into the economy, it is directly putting that investment into the economy. So that's why the impact of government expenditure is greater. Whereas on the other hand, when taxes are increased, the magnified impact is little less compared to the government expenditure increase, because the impact is indirect, and it's not directly into the economy. We are taxing the income, and on that, basically, and based on that we have the magnification. Like, when we get income, we don't spend all the money, right? Let's say I get $100 in income and I will spend $80 and I save $20. But if you think, when I'm paying taxes, I will only pay taxes on the $80, on the amount I'm consuming. Okay, so that's what it is. That $80 when I'm consuming becomes an income of another person, and he will only pay tax on that $80, not on the $100, right? So that's why the magnified impact of taxation is less compared to the magnified impact of government spending. Now, I know this all might sound a little bit gibberish, so that's why I will do examples so it makes more sense to you. But before I do examples, and I will do two examples, so it's very clear to you guys. But before I do examples, um, let me share one. Let me share one formula in order to calculate the impact of taxes on the economy or on the output. So impact of tax when the government is increasing taxes is given by how much you increase your taxes. So increase in taxes. Okay, so let's say you increase taxes by $10 million, or if you say, let's say you increase taxes by $1 million. So that's this, what is your increase, that times your multiplier. It's the same multiplier that we calculate to find out the impact of government expenditure, times your MPC, marginal propensity to consume. Now look at this, it's MPC, not MPS. So this is a big difference in this formula that you have to remember. Okay, because when we look at the impact of government expenditure, we look at MPS, marginal propensity to consume. But when we look at the impact of taxes, we look at MPC. We only, the money that we are using to consume, we pay taxes on that. So that's the formula we need to know in order to calculate the impact of taxes. So you might want to take this in your note, or during your exam you want to keep it on your side, so you might have to calculate it. But basically that's how you will calculate the negative impact. So this number will be a negative number because your output is actually going down by this number because of the increase in taxes. Since government increased taxes, the number you get using this formula is the output that falls by this level or by this amount. Okay, so let's do an example to understand this. Okay, so let's say the economy is going through a recession right now, and the government decides that they need to intervene and they need to increase their spending in the economy. So we are given with the information government spending will go up by $100 billion. Okay, and government decides that in order to increase this spending, they will finance this $100 billion. They will finance this money, everything through taxes. They will not borrow any money from bank or any other agency or other government, but they will finance this entire $100 billion through taxes. So the tax will also go up by another $100 billion. Okay, and let's say you're given with MPC equals to 0.8. Okay, now given this information, my question will be, what is the net impact on output? Because your government increased expenditure, the government expenditure went up, so there will be a magnified positive impact on output. But at the same time, your taxes went up also, so there will be a magnified negative impact on your output. So what is that net impact? Is that like the after these two policies are enacted, is the total output going up in the economy or going down? So that's what I'm asking you to calculate. Okay, so there's couple of steps involved. So the first step is that step 1 is to calculate the MPC or MPS, the marginal propensity to save, like just like last time, because we need this in order to calculate the multiplier, right? So MPC we know is given by 1 minus MPC, because if you remember, we did MPS plus MPC is equal to 1. So I just took MPC on the left hand side of the, from the left hand side of the equation to the right hand side, in order to calculate MPS. And in this problem, we already know MPC is 0.8, right? So 1 minus 0.8 is equals to 0.2. Okay, so MPS is 0.2. That's step 1. Now we look at step 2. Step 2 is basically we have to calculate the multiplier. Now again, if you remember or recollect from last class, the formula for multiplier is 1 divided by MPS. We already calculate MPS is 0.2, so 1 divided by 0.2 is equals to 5. So the multiplier is 5. Then we move on. We got this information. So then we move on to step 3. Okay. So step 3, we first calculate the impact of government expenditure or increase in government expenditure. So what is your impact on output because of government expenditure increase? So that again we know is given by initial injection times your multiplier, right? This we did this up to now. This is something we already did in our last class. So initial injection is $100 billion. Government is injecting $100 billion times your 5 multiplier, which we just calculated. So it's $500 billion. That's basically when what we are trying to say is when government is increasing spending by $100 billion, the output is going up by $500. That's what we are saying. Okay, now but the government is financing this increase in spending through taxes. So taxes are also going up by $100 billion. So there is an impact of that on the economy. So what is that impact? So let's calculate that, and we looked at the formula, and I gave you the formula just a minute ago. So the impact of taxes is given by, remember, increase in tax times your MPC, marginal propensity to consume. This is not MPS, this is MPC times your multiplier. And remember, the impact will be means that the output will go down by this number. So your increase in taxes is $100 billion, right? Remember, the government increased taxes by $100 billion, so it's 100 billion. Now MPC we know is given by 0.8, that's given in your problem. If you scroll up, you can also see, times 5, so we end up with 400 billion. That's the decrease in output because of taxes. Now if you compare the two, you will see the impact of government expenditure is more than the impact of taxes, again because the government increase in government expenditure goes directly into the economy. This goes directly into the economy, whereas this is indirect. This tax is indirect because this is imposed on income. Okay, so now our last step, which my question is, what is your net impact? Right? I'm asking what is your net impact. So net impact is actually 500 minus 400 billion. So net income in this case will be 500 minus 400 equals to 100 billion. So what it's saying is, when government will increase spending of $100 billion, that will be financed 100% by increasing taxes, then the output, overall net impact on output, will also go up by $100 billion. So that's an example of a balanced budget multiplier and what actually happens in the economy. Okay, now I'm going to do another quick example so it's pretty clear to you. You guys know the 5 steps now. Step 1 is to calculate your MPS, marginal propensity to save. Step 2 is to calculate your multiplier. Step 3 is to calculate your impact on output because of increase in government expenditure. Step 4 is to calculate the impact on output for increasing taxes, which was 400 billion in this case. And then final step is to calculate the net impact, which is 500 minus 400 is equal to $100 billion. That's the net increase in output because of these expenditures. Okay, so now I will do the second example so it's more clear to you guys. So let's say again, this time the government is thinking of increasing expenditure again, another round of expenditure, and let's say they decide they will put 200. Oh, sorry, let me do it properly so the handwriting is a little better. Let's say the government increases expenditure by 200,000. Okay, during a recession, the government increases expenditures by 200,000. Okay, and you're also given that MPC is equals to 0.8. Okay, but this time the government will increase this expenditure or will finance this increased expenditure through 2 different methods. Okay, they will increase taxes by 150,000. So out of the 200,000, out of this 200,000, they are financing 150,000 through taxes, and the remaining is through borrowing. So they're taking a loan from bank for $50,000. Okay, that's how they are financing this increase in government expenditure. So if you add 150 and if you add 50,000, you will get 200,000. So basically they are financing this 200,000 through taxes and loans, and then 150,000 is coming from taxes and 50,000 is coming from loans. Now given this information, what is the net impact on output? Okay, so again, step one is to calculate MPS, or the marginal propensity to save, which is given by 1 minus MPC, and we know MPC is 0.8, so 1 minus 0.8 is equal to 0.2. Then we have step 2, we calculate multiplier. Again, the same way, we know multiplier is given by 1 divided by MPS, or 1 divided by 0.2, which is equals to 5. Okay, so step 1 and step 2 are pretty easy, and it's so far we have done pretty similar to what we have done in the just like what we did before. Then we move to step 3, which is we calculate impact of G. So when government expenditure goes up, what is the impact on output? So we know it's given by initial injection, right, times multiplier. So based on that, we know the initial injection the government is putting is 200,000, right? The government is putting 200,000. So the initial injection is 200,000 and multiplier is 5. So we have the output will go up by $1 million. Okay, now what is the impact of taxes? Because government has increased taxes also by some portion, and that will have a negative impact on the output, right? So how do we calculate that? Again, if you remember, this is given by increase in taxes times your multiplier times MPC, and this formula you already know. So increase in taxes is 150,000, right? Government is financing 200,000 through taxes and loans, but they're only increasing taxes by 150,000. This information was given to you in the beginning, right? So that's this, and then we know multiplier is 5, we calculated that, and we are also given in the beginning that MPC is 0.8. So in this case, your output will decrease by 600,000. So because government has increased taxes by 150,000, the output will actually go down by 600,000. Okay, so then my final question was, what is the net impact on output? So net impact is basically the difference between this and this. Okay, so it's 1 million minus 600,000, which is equivalent to 400,000. So if you look, this is still much better than what we were in the initial position, right? Because government is increasing spending. Look, government is increasing spending by 200,000, but output, although there has been an increase in taxes, but output is still going up by 400,000. And again, if you see this impact, this is a direct impact, so this impact is greater than the impact of taxes, because the taxes are imposed on income, whereas government expenditures goes directly into the economy. So when we take the difference between these two, we get that the ultimately the output goes up by 400,000. Now if this is a negative number, if the net impact is a negative number, if you get, that means the output is going down, the overall output is going down. So hope this example gives you a kind of an idea, like when the how the Keynesian policies work. When economy is going through a recession, government injects money, and government usually finances that money through taxes or loans. But when they finance through taxes, that also has a negative impact on the economy or on the output. So we ultimately look at the two output differences and then find out what is the net impact on the economy. Okay, so then we move on to slide 5, which talks further about Keynesian theory, the Keynesian theory. And this Keynesian theory can be also explained through the bathtub model. If you remember, we use this bathtub model to explain the classical economics, right? But this same model can be used to explain how the economy operates under the Keynesian mindset, or under the Keynesian model. So in this scenario, it explains expenditure injections due to increase in government and export spending in addition to consumption and business investments. So again, if you remember, in the classical, there were no government, there were no foreign sector, there were no exports, or there were no imports. But under the Keynesian, we are considering a government as well as exports and imports, and addition to consumption and business investments. So the bottom model will consist of more elements under the Keynesian theory. Let me do a quick diagram of how it will look like. Again, it will be very similar. The diagram will be very similar to the classical theory. This is your bathtub model, this is your level of water. Okay, then we have a faucet here. Okay, and again, excuse my drawing because I'm not very good at drawing. And this is the one we have water coming out from here, if you remember. So here under the Keynesian model, let's say this is your Keynesian model, this level of water represents output, employment, and income. It's the same as classical. Under classical, we also had the same thing. It was represented by output, employment, and income. Now the differences are, this flow of water under Keynesian includes consumption, C, plus investment, but it also includes government expenditure, because government can pour money or inject money into the economy, and at the same time it includes foreign sector, so it includes exports is an injection into the economy, it increases your output, so it includes exports but not imports, because imports is something we subtract. So import is not flowing into your output, we subtract imports from your total output, so it is not an injection into the economy. So the injections will consist of consumption, which is C, investments, which is I, G is your government expenditure, and X is your exports. On the other hand, we still have leakages here. Water can still get out of the tub, and these leakages in this, under the Keynesian theory, the leakages are represented by savings. In classical we also had saving, but this time we also have government can increase the taxes, which will cause the output to go down. If you just look at the example, in that case, when there is an increase in taxes, the outputs are going down. So tax is another leakage, and then imports, that's another leakage, because imports reduce your output. We are buying the goods from foreign countries and not our country, so it's reducing the output of our country. Taxes, we are paying it to the government, so output is going down. Savings, we are not using that money, so it's a leakage from your output. So under the Keynesian model, that's the biggest difference. You have the government and the foreign sector, and under the leakages and injections, we represent those. Okay. The other things remain the same. The pipe is still the credit market. And then, basically these are the banks. So businesses and government can come to this credit market to take loans, which they use to inject into the economy to give output, as well as, and these output can go down because of savings or taxes or imports or a combination of all three. So an example, or that's how we will represent Keynesian model, um, um, or we will represent the Keynesian theories using the bathtub model. So again, if you look at slide 6, the Keynesian, under the bottom model, the Keynesian leakages are, anything that reduces your output, and that includes business savings, personal savings, taxes, and imports. On the other hand, injections are anything that will increase your output, and that includes consumption and investment, just like classical, but in addition, we will have government expenditure and we will have exports when foreign countries are buying our goods. So when injections will increase, let's say if government increases expenditure, what happens to the level of water? The level of water will go up. Okay, and if taxes go up, if government is increasing taxes, then the level of water will go down. So overall, the Keynesian theory says the main focus should be on aggregate demand. When the economy is going through a recession or a disruption, in order to take the economy out of the recession, we need to focus on the aggregate demand, and the way to do it is the government, because government expenditure is a component of aggregate demand, the government should increase its expenditure, which in turn will increase consumption and investment, and as a result there will be a magnified increase on your aggregate demand. Now definitely when government expenditure goes up, that expenditure needs to be financed through taxes, so there may be some negative impact on output as well, but the overall impact is positive, and which takes the economy out of the recession. And that's exactly what happened during the Great Depression. Again, remember, classical theory was failing at that time, and when we moved to the Keynesian theory, and when government started spending in the economy slowly started getting out, and ultimately it saved the economy from total collapse. And it came out of depression during the World War II in the 1940s, when governments spent massively on defense and on military. That's when, a lot of jobs were created, a lot of employment were created, people started to get income, and as a result, consumption and investment went up, and the economy came out of recession. So under the Keynesian theory, there is another theory called fiscal policy. This is important. There is one specific chapter on fiscal policy, which we will discuss right after the midterm. But for the midterm, you still need to know what is a fiscal policy. Okay, so it's this is the next few lectures are, or the next few slides are very important for your multiple choice questions, so make sure you understand. So fiscal policy is a type of Keynesian model, and what it basically says that anytime when the government changes its spending, or anytime when the government changes its taxes, that will be classified as fiscal policy. Okay, so anytime any action of the government when it adjusts spending or when it adjusts taxation to influence the economy, that is known as fiscal policy. So let's say during recession, if the government is increasing government expenditure, that's a fiscal policy. And let's say during inflation, if government is reducing taxes, and let's say they are increasing tax or reducing spending and increasing taxes, that will be also an example of fiscal policy. So anytime the government is changing a government spending, or anytime the government is changing taxes, that's associated with fiscal policy. Okay, now when Keynesian says that you need to take out the economy out of recession through increase in government spending. But in response to this, the classical economics people, they said, remember, they said they don't want any government in the economy. So they came back and they said, hey, so when government is borrowing money to finance their expenditure or finance that increase in expenditure, this means they will be taking the loans from the banks. So banks will have less funds available for the businesses to make private investments. So again, if you think the bank has a set amount of funds based on the savings, now businesses government is going and borrowing money from the bank, so less funds will be available to the businesses, so they will be able to make less investments. And they are saying the government will use this money for wasteful programs. These are not efficient. And this theory is known as crowding out effect, because government is taking money from the bank, and as a result it's driving out private investments, and that's why it's called crowding out effect. Okay, because when government will take out loans, what will happen, the amount of funds will go down, interest rates will also go up, because the demand for loans have gone up now because of government, and then businesses will be less motivated to take new loans, and these private investments are driven out, which is known as crowding out effect. Okay, now in response to this crowding out effect, the Keynesians came back with a response or with an answer. They said that we are only saying that the government should increase spending during recession, because during recession unemployment is very high, your inventory is stacking up, people are not buying from the markets, and as a result businesses are not motivated to make investments anyways. Business, even if the government does not take loans, businesses do not have the motivation to go to the bank and take loans and make investments. There is no incentive for the businesses to do that. They don't want to expand their operations during recessions. So that's why it makes more sense if the government is going and using that fund to give a push to the economy in order to push it forward. Okay, so government can go and increase the AD, which in turn will increase investments. Now in response to this, the new classical theory people again came back with another theory called the public choice theory. This is important. You need to know what public choice theory is. It will be in your exam. So lecture slide 12, public choice theory. What it means is, what this new classical economist group of people are saying in response to the Keynesians is that when government is increasing expenditure, or when government is expanding its expenditure, this results in bureaucracy and payments to special interest groups. So basically there is a lot of inefficiency, and it only goes to special interest groups, maybe to the elite people or to the rich people, and it ultimately creates very little positive economic impact in the long run. So what it's saying is, but the public choice theory, which the new classical economists came up with, states that when government is increasing spending during recession, it basically is inefficient. It's going through bureaucracy and payments to special interest groups, and ultimately the overall economy does not benefit that much. So you need to know what this means. You need to know crowding out effect, and then in response to crowding out effect, Keynesian said, hey, during recessions businesses will not even take money because they're not motivated to expand their operations. So it makes sense for the government to borrow the money from the bank and increase its operations, so there is a jump to aggregate demand and the economy is taken out of the recession. But in response to that, the new classical people again came and said, most of the government expenditure you are doing is wasted, and it's going to special interest groups and bureaucratic people, and and there is not much positive impact in the economy. So this is, then I move on to slide 13 of lecture 15, and this is also important. There will be a question on multiple choice question on this one. or I may give you a question, and the answer will be on this slide. Okay, so the Keynesian said, income is very important to determine your consumption, your savings and investments. But Keynesians also said there are several other non-income factors. So far we know income is very important, but there are other non-income factors that can impact consumption, savings and investments. Okay, so these slides list those non-income factors. Okay, the first one is the level of personal debt that exists in the economy. Now, if I have a lot of personal debt, most likely I will not be spending that much. I will be very careful in spending my money, and I will be saving some money. So in case of the worst situation, I can pay off the debts, and if I have very low personal level of debt, then my consumption will be higher. Okay, then the value of assets held by individuals, that's another factor. If I have more assets, then I am more confident than, anytime I can sell those assets and get money. And if I have more assets, or if the value of the assets that I own are more, then my consumption will be more, and the vice versa is also true. The third factor is the current tax code, as it provides incentives to spend or save. Like, if you file with your spouse, you can take deductions, which is an incentive because you can take out a deduction from your income. If you file with your child as dependent, then you can also take deductions. Then you can take deductions for your home interest, you can take deductions for your medical bills. So there's a lot of tax codes that gives incentives for you to spend or to save. The fourth one is expectation of job loss or income gain. So let's say if you are right now the recession and people are scared they will lose their job, what will they do? They will reduce their consumption and they will increase their savings. On the other hand, investments will go down, right? But if we look at the opposite scenario, if we think that we will get a promotion soon and our salary will go up, what are we going to do? We are going to spend more money and probably save less money. Then interest rates also affect consumption, and if interest rate goes up, consumption will go down. If interest rate goes down, consumption will go up. Investments are also affected by interest rates. If interest rates are high, investments will go down. If interest rates are low, investments will go up. Finally, cultural attitudes. Now remember this because sometimes students forget this and they select this option as the answer, but cultural attitudes towards spending or savings is also a non-income factor that can determine, like in certain parts of the world, like the religion says too much spending is not good, so people do not spend anything that's other than that's essential. Okay, or there are certain parts of the country where they believe, or there's tradition or there's a culture that we should not save money. It's not good to save money. We should spend all the money. So these attitudes, these traditions and beliefs also play an important role in determining consumption, savings and investments. So in short, basically Keynesian focuses on aggregate demand to take out the economy out of the recession, but this is a short-term solution, not a long-term solution. So that's why the new classical theory economists came back and they said the focus should be on aggregate supply and shifting the long-run aggregate supply curve to the right. So Keynesians focus on aggregate demand, but the solution they provide is more short-term. But that's why we move to the new classical theories, which provide more long-term solutions by focusing on the aggregate supply. So that takes care of lecture 15, and that's the end before your midterm 2. So your midterm 2 will cover from lecture 8 to lecture 15. I will also be emailing you a review for your exam, so you know what topics to look at and what are the things that you need to know. If you go over the examples, if you go over the slides, you should be good. It's going to be multiple choice questions, 35 multiple choice questions, and then some math questions, within the multiple choice, and it's going to be an hour and 20 minutes. Again, if there's anything you're not clear with, send me an email or contact me and I will reply back to you in 24 hours. But other than that, that's it for today's class. And next Tuesday we will have the midterm. I will have a separate announcement. I'll send out a separate email about the instructions for the midterm. But if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And then after midterm, we will continue from then on. But good luck for your exam, and we will start again after the exam. Thank you.